Welcome to the Lead Team Podcast, where faith meets leadership and calling meets practice. On this podcast, we talk real leadership, the wins, the weight, the failures, and the growth, all through the lens of faith, wisdom, and healthy teams. If you're leading in business, ministry, or anywhere else, you're in the right place. We hope that you enjoy this episode. I've got a great guest on here today by the name of Scott Harrop. And Scott and his wife, Joy, have been married 30 years, and they live in Eagle, Idaho. Scott is the executive pastor of Rock Harbor Church in Meridian, Idaho, and he's also the owner of Culture Shift Consulting. Scott, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much, Kyle. It's so good to be with you today.
Yeah, we're excited to hear about your story, learn about the things that you're passionate about. So I always ask people that are on the show if they would give us some of their background, some of their upbringing, and then ultimately, how did you end up coming to know Jesus and surrender your life to him? So I'm going to turn it over to you to share that with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's so good to be with you, and it's humbling and excited to share a little of our story today. When I think about my childhood, I was one of those kids that we grew up in church. First Sunday I was out of the hospital, I was in the nursery of the church, and that's just kind of how that worked. If the church doors were open, the Harrops were there. So what that meant,
Nice.
What that meant for us back in that day is that we went to Sunday school at 9:45. And then the Sunday school teacher, they did okay, but not like that great. And so then you'd have another person speak again at 11 o'clock, and then that person would get done. And then it was good in the morning, but it was so good, Kyle, that you went back on Sunday night, and you actually had another shot on Sunday night. And then, oh no, it didn't end. And then on Mondays you went and you visited the people who came to your church on Sunday. And then on Wednesday night you had church again. And then on Friday you had an activity. And so when the church doors were open, the Harrops were there, and that was my childhood. So
where did you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in Topeka, Kansas,
Bro. Bible Belt. Come on.
And then in Topeka, I say Kansas. I love my Kansas friends, but it's a good place to be from, and it's a different place. And Topeka, Kyle, this is so cool because I live in Idaho now, right? Topeka means a good place to dig potatoes. And
was this like Irish immigrants that originally landed in Topeka?
No, it was like Indians, the Shawnee Indians and Tecumseh Indians. And they dug potatoes in Topeka, apparently. And then the Lord has us land in the land of potatoes. So it was like,
wow,
cradle to grave, I guess. I don't know. But that's our story. Yeah. And so I grew up in church when I was in ninth grade, 15, felt like God was calling me to ministry, and which is a really weird age for that to happen, because you're like, I want to be friends with everybody and be cool, but yet I love God too. And like, I played the game in high school, to be quite honest. It wasn't until my senior year of high school, after I graduated, at a camp, that I fully surrendered and said, I'm all in. And when I say fully surrendered, what that means is the first night of camp, the speaker, Joe Burris, he talked about giving it all away, giving everything to the Lord, going all in. I remember he talked about Jesus walking into the temple and he was turning over tables and he was kicking butt. And I was like, I didn't know you could say that in church, but he just did. So that was cool. And I'm like, I like this guy. And by the end of it, got so convicted that I walked up to Joe afterwards and I said, hey man, I need you to come back to my room with me. And I said, I need to give you something. And so I walked in my room, I grabbed a bag of weed and a pipe, and I handed it to him. And he went out back and he smoked it, I think. I'm not sure, but no. But that was like, hey man, I'm done. Like, it's time to move forward with my life. And that was like one of those, moments. Like, it was like, okay, Lord, I see what you're doing. And went to Bible college 3 weeks later. And then I've been in church work ministry now for 30 years in 4 different churches across 4 different states. So,
wow, man. So you grew up in Topeka, went to school in Kansas too.
Yes. Went to college in Missouri.
College in Missouri.
Hmm.
and then ended up, what states did you end up living in, working at
Yeah.
different
So
churches?
met my wife when we were in college in Springfield, Missouri, a little school called Baptist Bible College. Some call it Baptist Bridal College, but and now it's called Mission University. But we met there in '91. I was in college. '92 we met. Um, got married in '95, and then would go work at a church out in the Seattle, Washington area in Everett, Washington. Um,
Really?
in 1996, and was there from 1996 to 2002 there in Everett. So that's a unique place to live.
Yeah, no kidding. I didn't even know you lived in Washington. Wow.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's where
And
my wife is from. She's from Everett, so that was the
okay,
connection. Yeah.
got it. Got it. Crazy. Man. So you've been in ministry for 30 years.
Hmm.
Um, Gosh, here's a question for you. What would be something that you would say to somebody who is trying to discern if they're called to ministry? What would you say to them? Um, as somebody who's been in ministry for 30 years, seen it all, seen behind the curtain, seen all of the ups and downs, all the different stuff. What's something that you would say to somebody who's trying to discern whether or not they're called to ministry?
Yeah. Like, thanks for the softball, bro. Like, geez, thought
Hey
we were
man,
friends.
you've been in it for 30 years. Come on, man. Think on your feet. Think on your feet.
Thought we were friends. No, I think I would phrase it like this. If you can do anything other than ministry,
Yeah.
you should.
Wow. Unpack that for people who are listening, because some people are going to be like, wait, what?
You have to know that
Yeah.
you know that
Yeah.
you know that this is what God is doing in your life, because there are so many places like to just peel off. And I think back, I don't remember a lot from college, but there is one moment I remember, and this was the moment. 300 guys in this facility, and the dean of men talking, and he gets up and he says, "I'm a freshman in college, 3 weeks out of smoking weed every day." So like I'm still probably not completely coherent. And so he says this. He goes, "I want you to look around. There's 300 of you in the room. Less than half of you will graduate from this college. Out of the half that graduates, less than half of those will actually make it into ministry. And out of the half of those, less than half of those will make it past 5 years in ministry. And if you look around this room, there will be less than 10 of you still in full-time ministry after 30 years."
Have
And
you been able to
I
look
looked,
back and see?
I thought the dude was out of his mind crazy. And he was spot on. He was
Wow.
spot on. Dr.
Wow.
Tony Isaacs. I'll never forget that. And I looked to the left, looked to the right. I'm like, I don't know about the rest of these jack wagons, but I'm pretty sure I'm called to this. Like, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. And I
Yeah.
think they did too. And it's not for the faint of heart, man. Like, it's just not. But the goodness you get to see, oh,
Mm.
it's rich, rich, and it's worth it all. So yeah.
Man, so rich and so good. I would say my experience is very similar. I've been going for over 20 years. And yeah, it is the greatest joy
Yes.
to experience if this is what you're called to do. Um, but it can also be one of the hardest things you ever do in your life. And I remember when I was talking to church planters and we were thinking about planting a church in South Tacoma and Washington. I remember meeting with a number of them because I'm like, I just need to understand the minds of these people, how they're wired. And these were people that have been going for a while, not brand new. And and the first one's like, this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. And I was like, come on, like what? And then the next one I met with and got some great wisdom, he said, this is probably going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done in your life. I'm like, okay, that's two people that have said this.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then the third person said the same thing. And I was just like, and I had none, these guys were not connected to each other. And I was like, wow, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, I think the reality of being in ministry and people and navigating
Hmm.
people and organizing
Hmm.
leadership and all this stuff, we're also dealing with spiritual implications too. Um,
Absolutely.
and all the stuff that happens. And so, yeah, totally would agree with that. Man, that's super good. Um, you you own Culture Shift Consulting. I'd love to talk to you about organizational health because that obviously blends into your role too as executive pastor, and how that works doesn't matter if it's a business, nonprofit, church, whatever. Principles of leadership are the same. And would love to get into that. Like, what was your draw to wanting to do organizational health stuff as well as leadership development? Let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think after a while in ministry, you go, we go into ministry because we love the Lord, hopefully, and we love people, right? I mean, that's it.
Hmm.
And then you get into it and you realize, well, what happens when the thing starts to grow? Like, what
Yeah.
happens then?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my goodness, like I don't know what to do. Like I don't know how to handle this. And
Hmm.
so obviously you go to the word, right? And there's
Right.
like so many leadership principles from the word of God that are laid out that help us so much know how to do that. But then the people interaction side of things begins to take place, and we have these teams we're trying to build and do more together because we're better
Hmm.
together. And then unhealth happens, and we don't know what to do with that. And the reason unhealth happens is because we're unhealthy ourselves personally. And the most dangerous part of that is we're not aware of it.
Mm.
And so after working in a couple of different organizations and churches and seeing just the growth and what comes from that, that can be a really difficult thing because none of us were trained on what to do when it grows. And I kind of segment my ministry life into two different quadrants. I have worked in two churches of that I actually kind of grew up in those style of churches. They were independent, fundamental, Bible believing, King James Version, 1611 churches, and it was a
Yeah.
lot of fun. I wore a suit to work every day to be a student pastor in 1996. That was awesome.
Wow. Times have changed, man.
And literally, I would go and take my clothes off and change and go into a high school and wear normal clothes and then come back out and put my suit on. And my pastor had no idea, but he would have been ticked off if I did that. So that was kind of like the first 14 years of ministry was that style.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I was sitting at a conference. It's called Drive. I think it was 2007, 2008. And Andy Stanley said something. He said, you've been taught now and that there's a different way to do ministry. And you really have a couple of options with that. He goes, the problem is that nobody's actually going to do anything. In my experience, most people don't act. They think about it, but they don't actually take the step out of the boat. And
Hmm.
he said, here's the thing. You can either go back to your church and live the way you have forever, or you can go find a church that aligns with more how your philosophy of ministry is, or you need to go plant one. He goes,
Interesting.
that's really your options if you really feel like you should do ministry in a different way and context. And in that day and age, that was when ministry was starting to change and morph into something a little bit different than the traditional style. It's when the non-denominational movement really started to kick off and take off. And so as a recovering Baptist is what I call myself now. It's like I still believe so much of the same principles and theology, just doing that in a way that shows the love of Christ, I think is the difference. And to
Mm.
want to make a difference and be involved
Mm.
in people's lives and be more authentic and be more transparent. And so I got into a different style of church after that. And that church, when we first got there, was about 2,600 people, one campus. And 8 years later, it was 14,000 people and 10
Wow.
campuses,
Wow.
about a 400% growth over a course of 8 years. And in that, you learn how important culture and organizational health is. And when you're growing at that kind of a pace, it's very easy to just try to cover all the bases, but not really invest in the people like you could or should.
Right. Right.
And I think this is where my passion for org health came from. Is you realize these are the Lord's people on your team and staff, and the Jack Welch form of leadership, it might not be the best form of management, that you hire and then you cut the bottom 10% every year and you rehire and try to level up. Um, in the business world, that's pretty normal, or can
Right.
be at times.
Right.
But in the church world, when you have that kind of a mindset, these are the Lord's people. And I think my philosophy is, if God has led you to hire them, God's led you to develop them. And that's a choice, right, that we make. And if we don't make the investment, then we can't get upset about the return. And so that's where my passion began to come from. Like, okay, what if there was something we could do to really build teams and help us work together and focus on the healthy side of the organization, as opposed to just the smart side of the organization, and I think that's where most businesses and churches do. Even we focus on strategy, we focus on the finances, we focus on the marketing, we focus on like what the product we're trying to give away,
Hmm.
but we don't focus on the health side. Like, how do we have low politics? Like, how do we have low drama? Like, how do we have high morale? Like,
Yeah.
what's that look like? Where people are feeling this, like, man, I want to be here. I want to come to work. And I think what I've discovered through the years is that once we can help people understand who they are in Christ and how the Lord has wired them, we can make sure we get them on the right seat of the bus. And I think a lot of times what happens is that we hire people not understanding how they're wired and not even understanding what we're asking them to do. And shame on us. We need to have really clear objectives of what that person is supposed to do. And what if we could tie a person's geniuses to a job that a role they might be fulfilling, so that at the end of the day, when they go home, they feel nothing but joy. They got to work in their sweet spot, and they got to be like, man, this is what I was created to do. And my own personal philosophy is, I think so many people in ministry, they go into it because they love Jesus, they love people, but they don't get on the right seat of the bus. And because of that, leadership doesn't know what to do. And then they end up just kind of fading away and people get hurt. And that's where my passion comes, is seeing hurt people that don't need to be hurt. Um, so I feel like if we as an organization can do the right things, like we can we can really help like them take the steps they need to take, and we'll go further faster if we can do that, and it'll be fun for everybody.
Okay, this is good. Triggers a thought and a question. In the midst of growing, like you
Mm,
grow, you're talking
mhm,
about in this church that significantly grow at a
mhm,
rapid rate.
mhm.
How are you putting in, because developing people takes time. I wish it was like
Yes.
this. How do you
Wouldn't it be
create,
amazing?
yeah, how do you create a system in the midst of development, or to develop people in the midst of rapid growth, um, that maintains that health? Because I mean, there are needs that are now, like we're growing now.
Yes.
How do we
Yes.
create
Yeah.
because some people and this is the business world oftentimes, and it's most organizations,
It
they
is.
want to hire somebody that's already developed and can just do it, because the development takes a while and it's hard, and you're having to extend some grace and some, like, hey,
Yes.
we're dropping some balls, let's pick those up. How do you do
Yep.
that in the midst
Yeah.
of a rapidly growing organization?
Great question. Um, and to say it quite frankly, we didn't. It was exactly what you described. I call it the pro style form of like leadership and ministry, is that we're going to go and we're going to hire the best talent everywhere we possibly can. And
Mhm.
they've already been there. They've done that. They've got the t-shirt. We're going to put them together in this team and say, go. Um, they have the abilities, but the problem is that they don't know how to work as a team. It
Right.
doesn't matter.
Right.
And that's what we saw happen over and over and over again.
Mm.
And it was just a really sad thing. And that's why I in the beginning of it, I was younger in ministry and didn't completely understand like the
Yeah.
idea of even the importance of leadership development on a staff, and the importance of organizational health on a staff, and the importance of teamwork like on a staff like that. And it's actually why I left, ultimately, because I was like, this is just not healthy, and I'm actually contributing to this if I stay. And great people, great church, doing great things. Just a different philosophy of ministry is what it came down to. Um,
Right.
and that's when decided like I know the Lord wants me to do something different, and that took place and happened, and that's what brought us to Idaho. And here, it's been the same kind of growth. I can tell you is like 1,300 to 8,500 in 9.5 years, and to see that kind of rapid growth take place, what uh, what we've done differently here, and my role's a little different here too, is we have focused on being intentional investing in people. And like, what's that look like? That means that you're having, you have a staff calendar with weekly meetings, and once a month there's a leadership development meeting that happens for the whole staff, that you're breaking into groups and you're reading books together and you're talking through different leadership principles together and having a talk on that, and then breaking it down with 2 or 3 questions around the table and discussing those things per team. And
Yeah.
so that happens on a on a monthly basis, right? And then you have a director development day, that you're developing your directors and investing in them and teaching them how do we steward and manage people? How do we invest in people? How do we help people
Right.
grow? How do
Right.
we know we're actually moving the ball down the field with people? And that's where the passion came. Like, oh man, you start to it's either you build or you buy, right? And so,
Mm,
like, one ministry philosophy is we're going to buy the staff or we're going to build the staff. When you build the staff, they get your DNA, they understand who
mhm.
you are, they
Yeah.
understand your core values, they understand your staff values, and they're like, I want to be a part of this. And then they get invested in, and they feel like, man, this is a great place to be, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I say it like this: I think there are many churches that are amazing to attend, but they're not that great to work at. There are some churches.
That might be a mic drop moment.
There are some churches that are amazing to work at, but they're not really that great to attend. But like, why can't they? And they should be both.
Right.
They should be both. The
Right.
problem is, as leaders, we don't see our own blind spots, and we're not aware, and it takes more than one person. And I think we look at the lead pastor role, and they have to become the be all end all, right? They have to be the best communicator, and they've got to be the best vision caster. They've
Right.
got to be the best developer of people. They have to be the most relational person. And we're asking somebody to do something they're not capable of doing. God didn't
Right.
wire them to be that way. Um,
Right.
and so getting to the place where you realize, no, 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 we need everybody like to make this thing work. That's where the magic happens, right? When team cohesion happens and trust is built, and we can just see things move forward. Like, that's when it gets exciting, when we get to see that.
Love that. Man. Um, yes. I mean, if you've been in ministry eh, long enough, you begin to see exactly what you were talking about. And sad to say, a lot of church culture is still driven that way, which I think comes from roots back to when churches were very small and they were
Hmm.
community little churches, and so much of the community was connected, but it was this little church of 40, 50 people. And it was enough to hire a pastor who wasn't making much, but literally they were
Yep.
doing everything. And it seems
Yep.
like that is kind of, even though culture has shifted so much in churches,
Hmm. Hmm.
that same mentality still carries through in a lot of people,
Hmm.
which is unhealthy.
Yeah.
And I think this idea of team and really developing teams and right seat on the bus. I mean, that's another thing. I think, man, I feel passionate about this too. But like, um, helping people to find the right seat on the bus and having a greater filtering system than just, I love Jesus and I feel called to ministry. Great. We want to
Yeah.
hire you.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
just going to plug
Hmm.
you in,
Hmm.
instead of like helping people to become self-aware of who they are,
Hmm.
their gifts, their talents, and
Hmm.
then putting them in a system that develops those things in them, while in obviously character and all of that stuff too. And that's a whole nother
Hmm.
ball of wax, hiring
Yeah.
people for gifts and firing for character. Um, but yeah, interesting, man. How do you feel like this is connected to I'll say efficiency and productivity in the pursuit of the Great Commission.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. When we think about team cohesion and we think
Hmm.
about working together, once we can help, once we can help like understand ourselves in a different way, like maybe in a new way of how we are wired
Yeah.
and how God has uniquely gifted us, and then I can also understand what it's like to be on the other side of me now because I understand how I come across to people. And
Hmm.
then I can understand how my brother or sister next to me is wired and how it's completely different. Um, it's this beautiful thing where I can remove some of the guilt and the judgment in my life. I'll say it like this. Kyle, have you ever sat in a meeting and you're like sitting there listening to someone talk and you're like, I could never come up with that in my lifetime. Like those thoughts would never go through my mind. Have you ever had those thoughts in a meeting?
Sure.
And as we do, we're going, I'm beginning to feel guilty now because I don't bring the same value to the team,
Mm.
and I don't bring the same thoughts and ideas to the team. But you bring a totally different set of skill sets to the team that the person who's talking and you feel that way when they're talking could never do either.
Right.
And when we can learn to value one another at the same rate and go, oh, I I need that person because they can do things and they get life from stuff that I don't get life from, right?
Hmm.
So I we need one another. And I think what I love about the working genius is that it can remove so much guilt, it can remove so much judgment. And it's 80% about how you're wired, and 20% about your personality. And I think a lot of times, most assessments, it's really more about your personality type than it is about how you like to work and what brings you joy.
Yeah.
And once I discovered this and started integrating it into our teams, it becomes a common language now. If you were to walk by our desks in the offices, everybody has their working genius actually on their desk,
Mm.
on their outside of their cubicle, so people know, oh, this person's an IW, or this person's an EW, or a GI, or whatever that is in the working genius language. And our staff can go, okay, I know how to approach this conversation based off of how they're wired. It's this beautiful thing,
I love
and a
it,
lot of
man.
fun. A lot of fun because now people can come into the room and to the meeting and they can show up at the best version of themselves because they know how the gifts that they're bringing to the table.
Hmm.
And you also might remove yourself from certain meetings that probably should have been an email anyway, and go, I don't need to be involved in that because I'm not bringing anything to that meeting. Right.
Right.
Um, but you also might go, you know what? Jill, who works on the kids team, she has a wiring that we actually need to have her wisdom, like on our creative team or on a different team. Do we have permission to bring Jill in because of how she's wired and she
Yes.
might help us figure this out over here?
I love
Oh, my
that.
friend, now we're cooking with kerosene because now it's like we're breaking down silos. We're breaking down different ministry barriers and walls. And I love what John Maxwell always says: don't let my barriers be yours, or don't let your barriers be mine. Just because you have a barrier doesn't mean it's a barrier for me. Like, you want to
Right.
build a fence up, that's fine, but I'm
Right.
I'm busting through the fence, my friend.
Right.
I'm not going to be held back. Now we're getting people to work together in a way that it's like, this is actually fun.
I
This
love
is
it.
actually what should happen, and you're going to go so much further, and your productivity is going to go up 30 to 50% because you've gotten rid of the drama, and you can have the open conflict that's healthy, and you're going to get to a better place. I love the phrase, the smartest person in the room is never smarter than all the people in the room.
So true.
We need everybody. And
Yes.
if you're the smartest person in the room, go find a different room. Like, you're not in the right room. So uh, I challenge you, go find a different room. You'll go farther in this life. You will. But you've
Yeah.
got to go find, and you need to go get around people who are way smarter than you.
So
And
good, man.
I love doing that. It is so uncomfortable, but it's so good, right? It's so good.
Yes. Well, and for people that are listening or watching, just to give you some context, he's using some language about working genius. Essentially, working genius is something that comes out of Patrick Lencioni's The Table Group.
Mhm.
Um, and it is 6 different geniuses that people have. Everybody has 2 geniuses, 2 working competencies, and 2 frustration areas. And so Scott uses these assessments and these tools to help bring organizational health and develop leaders and put people in the right spot. So we'll put some links to that in the show notes too, so that you have some context if you want to dig deeper into that. Um, Man, so good. I mean, I think one of the things too, if we're talking about working genius, that is, I love the conversation about meetings, because you can be in meetings that go on for hours and it's like, I didn't need to be here. Like, like, this is
Yeah.
not a time for me to be here,
Yeah.
because literally my genius doesn't match up with what's happening in the meeting. And so even efficiency, and there's something about that when it comes to caring for your people. I think as you're developing a culture, like making sure the right people are in the room, and there's clarity on what we're doing in the meeting, um, versus people always having to be in meetings and having meetings that just kill your staff. Any thoughts on that?
Yes. Yeah. I think when you think about org health, right? Like we think about the 4 disciplines of organizational health, right? That Lencioni lays out. Like number 1, we need to build a cohesive leadership team.
Hmm.
And so that's step 1. Uh, Discipline 2 is we're going to create clarity throughout the
Hmm.
organization and make things super clear. Like we all love what Brene Brown says, right? Clarity is kindness. It's the kindest
Hmm.
thing we can do for someone.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
once we create the clarity for our teams of what they're actually supposed to be doing, we're empowering them to go and do the work, right, of the
Hmm.
ministry. And then we're gonna over communicate that clarity, because that's what happens. We have a meeting, right? And then, or we have an offsite, and then we don't talk about the offsite. We don't talk about we have these, I call them, really, like, the most expensive workbooks I have are the
Hmm.
conferences I've gone to, and my notes are still in the workbook, right? Like they're still sitting in there, and I never applied one principle from what I went away from. And I've done that countless times. Don't like to admit it, but I have. And you go, man, that was a really expensive notebook. That's what it was. How do we take the principles from the notebook, right, and apply those principles and take them further? So when we think about this whole idea of leadership development, we might have an offsite where we have this big thing we talk about. Well, what that means is over the next 3 months, that our staff meetings or leadership development meetings should incorporate the next 3 times things that we're going to reinforce or over communicate to our team that we
Absolutely.
learned. And we're asking the question, how do we actually get that into practice? Right?
Yeah.
Like, once we get some momentum, like as a team, that's when it gets fun, right? And it's like,
Yes.
now we know where we're going, and this is fun, and we're doing this together, and it's not about one person, it's about all of us and the Lord. And we can't touch the glory of God. Like, that's the number one principle in ministry is, there's you just don't touch the glory of God. And it's not about us, it's about him. We can get ourselves all mixed up in that, though. That's the problem, because identity, pride, arrogance, like, it all flourishes. And there's a book, When Narcissism Met the Church, right? Like, it's like it happens in organizations. And we have to be so careful, like, as leaders, to go, man, this isn't about me. This is about the kingdom. This is about empowering people to do the work of the ministry, because that's what he tells us to do. He tells us to go make disciples, right? And then he tells us to have the people do the work of the ministry. It's not for all the leadership to do. Like, our
Yes.
job's to empower people to do the work,
Yes.
and get to live in communities where we're doing life together the way Christ wants us to. How do we push that through the organization and all the way through the church?
Man, bro. I mm, I will say that question, how do we do that? There's a lot of people that I meet with, and even we have plans, theory, even executing of those plans. But have you seen in your plans of doing that, executing of doing that, have you seen there be pushback from congregational lay people, or Has that been kind of a fluid? No, actually, we've seen it work incredibly well. And we've seen the empowering of the saints, the body of Christ, the
Hmm.
people that are out there working in the world, not in the church, really grab on and go, yeah, we're in. We want to do
Hmm.
this. We want to make a difference in the place we
Hmm.
live, work, and
Hmm.
play. Like,
Hmm.
has that, has there been a wrestle in that? Or has that been actually, no, it's been pretty fluid and the Lord's really put grace on it,
We all love what Covey says, right? Begin with the end in mind.
right?
So if we can begin like from the beginning, like thinking about a culture and think about shifting a culture, if from the beginning, if we can go, you know what, we realize we need to shift some things and we're going to put this plan into place and we're going to execute this plan. Um, but more than that, I mean, like before that, Kyle, it's countless hours in prayer. Like, Lord, what do you have us to do? Like, what does our team need developed on? It's not just like, and I think that's where when the business principles, like and godly principles, when those things two collide,
Yeah,
my tagline is when leadership development and organizational health converge, culture
right,
shifts. Right. I mean,
right.
that's when culture shifts is when that happens. And so we've seen through the staff like that begin to push down. You can see things begin to be healthy.
Hmm.
What I will tell you is it only takes one unhealthy apple like to ruin the whole bunch.
Hmm.
And that principle's true in the church world for sure. Um, and so we as leaders have to keep ourselves healthy all the time. And I advocate for lead pastors, XPs meeting with a counselor once a month, and the church should pay for it. It will keep your staff healthier, and it will
Hmm.
keep your church healthier when your leadership is healthy. And
Agreed.
I think, 20 years ago, if you said you were going to go see a counselor, people are like, what's wrong with you? Um, Today in our culture, it's like, hey, I'm going to see my therapist. And it's like, high five, see you when you get back, bro. Have a good time. Like
Right,
it's
right.
culture's changed, a lot. Uh,
Totally changed.
and that's a good thing because we need people to be authentic. We
Yes,
need people to be real. And
yes.
if leadership is not real, nothing else is going to be real. Right.
It's true. And man, on the counseling note, I mean, I grew up in a family, nothing against counseling, but it was just never like, it wasn't a value. It wasn't like,
No.
hey, we should get some counseling. It was kind of like, hey, pull your bootstraps up and let's get on with
Yeah.
it. You had your cry, let's go. Like that kind of upbringing.
Hmm. Yep.
Moving on. And in the last couple of years, um, have been blessed to be able to get counseling, and it's
Hmm.
been so helpful. My wife and I individually meeting with a counselor, and just both of us, just there is, I don't know. And there for people that are counselors that are gifted to do that, I just go, man, thank you so much. Cause my counselor, I'm like, this guy is awesome.
Hmm.
Literally, I'm just sitting there talking with him and
Hmm.
he's asking these questions that just unlock things for me. And I'm like,
Yes.
ah, thank you. Worth every dollar. Here you
Yeah,
go.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
you
I
know?
think I told my, I
And
think I told my counselor last month, I'm glad you're in Alaska because I would have just punched you for that question. Um, and he said, I'm glad I'm in Alaska too, Scott. I said, yeah, I needed to hear it. Like it does. It challenges you in a way. And we
yeah,
all need it. We all need it.
yeah,
When we
man,
get better,
so
the team
good.
gets better. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really going that extra mile. I mean, another area that I think is, and this is organizationally, church, business, whatever, is this area of conflict.
Mhm.
Um, and I think people think conflict, they think negative.
Yes.
And I know you would agree with this too, but like actually there's healthy conflict.
Mhm.
Um, Talk to us about healthy conflict and how to have healthy conflict and what does that look like? Because we're not all going to see eye to eye, or we're going to interpret things differently that somebody says, or get offended or frustrated or all that stuff because we're people. And a lot of people, I think, oftentimes just don't feel like, especially if it's a boss, they don't feel like they
Mhm.
can say anything. They're like, "Mm, yeah, sure,
Yeah.
great."
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
we navigate that?
So I think it all starts, with when you think about org health and you think about the five dysfunctions of a team.
Mm,
Number one, the base of the triangle is you need to. It all relies on trust, right?
mm,
And the reason there typically is unhealth is because there's an absence of trust. And so once we can heal that trust and begin to have the trust with one another, then we can begin to have a time where we can have some times where we can actually hold one another accountable, and we can have some conflict and have some healthy conflict. And healthy conflict drives us to a better decision.
mm.
It will help us get there,
Okay.
when we are actually debating about ideas rather than people. And so that's the people side of things is when we get all jacked up. But when we understand, like, this is about what's best overall and what the Lord wants. And so we're going to come in with different ideas and thoughts. And if
Mhm.
you come in with a baseline trust that you trust one another as a team, the conflict can happen in a healthy way, right? Um, which leads us to what happens next. And that is that we actually commit to the right ideas. But here's what I always say about this: people won't buy in until they get a chance to weigh in. So if you can have conflict where people get a chance to weigh in, and then we all agree what we're going to do next, then we're going to commit to the right ideas. And now I have buy in because we're all doing this together. And I think that's where, if you miss the step of conflict, where it's like we're actually discussing the ideas about what we could and what we should be doing, and what we must do, which are the three questions I love to ask: what could we do? What should we do? What must we do? Um, then we can get to and so you should mine for conflict. I encourage you as a leader, to mine for conflict with your team. You should look for it. Like, let's get it all out, because once we get it all out, now we have even a higher level of trust, because we're believing, like, okay, I know this person is for me, right? If you and I are a team, Kyle, and we're trying to do something together, I know you're for me. I'm for you. This
Right.
is not about me. I want
Right.
to see us work together better than we ever have. Um,
Yes.
and it's not for our glory. It's for his, right? So
Right.
what greater calling do we have in this life? There's none, I mean,
Right.
we can have all the world, like all the money in the world. I mean, but that's not going to bring us peace or happiness or joy for a time. But like, when you get to plunder hell and populate heaven,
Right.
let's go. Right? That's what
Right.
it's about. Like,
Right.
let's do something. And that means we have to get rid of ourselves and go, we're so much better together as a team. And that
So good.
conflict will make us better. So, but we view conflict a lot of times in negative ways, like you said. And healthy conflict, man, it just breeds growth. That's what it breeds.
Man, and scripture says that when the brothers live together in unity, there God
Mm,
commands his blessing, like he
mm,
pours out his blessing.
mhm,
And so I just think like healthy conflict about developing that trust, which leads to a spirit of unity. And I think even
mhm.
from a leadership standpoint, as leaders, and maybe there are leaders watching this, listening to this, like if people are hired to follow you, they will follow you up to an extent. They will
Yes.
check off the list, but there is something different, especially in the church world. But this is in any organization too. When people live together in unity because there is a developed trust and a built trust, um, there's a grace that's upon that. That's just a principle of scripture that
Hmm.
God blesses. And
Yeah.
yeah, so powerful. And I think oftentimes a lot of visionary pioneer leaders are like,
Hmm.
let's go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people are hired to follow them as maybe,
Yes.
say, employees of an organization. But that will wane over time
Hmm.
because there is an opportunity for healthy conflict. And as conflict happens, what ends up happening is people end up getting let go or they
Hmm.
leave or all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. And so what you're talking about is, it, I mean, it would make sense to me is you're talking about a long-term momentum building development plan for teams to execute, be the most efficient, most productive, and people enjoy doing it together.
That's when it's fun.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
real,
Yeah.
man.
is we talk about shift. Like you think about shift, right? Like the acronym shift. Start with your why. Like that's when we're working with the leadership teams. Like we need to start with why do we do what we do, right?
Right.
And if we're trying to shift the culture, we need to honor our past, right? Because so many times what happens in organizations, it's like, well, we've always done it this way, and it's still not working, but we're still doing it that way because that seems right. So
Right.
we need to honor what has been, right? And go,
Right.
let's go. That there's no golden calves. Like we're good. Like that's where we were, right? And then the I is we have to invest in our staff and ourselves, right? And that's when we really start to get like moving, get momentum moving, is when we're investing in ourselves and we're
Mm-hmm.
investing in our team. And then the F is we need to have fun together, right? It's really important. And teams that thrive and move forward, they're fun to be a part of. But we've all been on teams that aren't that fun to be on. And as a leader, we got to help bring some of the fun, or bring somebody else on the team that has the fun and have them bring the
Right.
fun to the team, which
Right.
is even better because then you're not responsible for it. And then the last thing we have to remember is the T, and that's that trust doesn't transfer. Um, if you're on a new team, you all the trust you have with the old one, the new people don't know that. They don't
Correct.
know you. And that doesn't transfer to where you are today. And so you have to look at your that shift and go, okay, how do we continue to build the trust and how do we move forward?
Right. Right.
And what I love to talk about when you think about that, and that acrostic coming down, is that when you remove the fun or the F, that's the kind of culture that you're going to have.
We'll let you figure that out, people. Non-visual
Yeah.
people, just work through the
Yeah.
letters there.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's super good. Super good, man.
I was like, I'm never having you on my show again. Never doing this.
You're great. You're great. Let me ask you a question, and this is obviously on the fly, but like, do you have any people, and you don't have to name names, you can just describe the situation if you want, or you can name names of people that you have seen develop and just thrive incredibly well, that have moved from point A, they've been a part of the organization that you've been running,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yes.
experiencing health. Obviously, we're
Yes.
always recalibrating, but
Mm-hmm.
like somebody that has really developed and grown into greater responsibility as a leader, that you would say is kind of a testimony or shining example of somebody that you've watched in the midst of all the things we're talking about today.
Absolutely. They're probably on our team currently. I won't use their names, but there's
Okay.
like four people that I
Yeah.
can think of right now, where they were at one place and now where they are, and what the Lord has done in their life and how they've grown, and they've put the work in. You got to put the work in,
Yeah.
but they put the work
Absolutely.
in, and it's helped them grow. And yeah,
Yes.
like I always say this: if I'm not working myself out of a job, I'm not doing my job correctly.
So good.
There should be a day that I'm no longer on staff at a church because we brought everybody up and they can handle it and take it and move forward, right?
Love it.
And maybe God has something else for me, maybe He doesn't. I don't know, but like I'm always trying to work my way out of a job. And how do
Mm.
we bring people along and empower them along the way? And I think that's the part as a leader, that it's easy to be selfish at times, and we're like, oh, I have to do this. Oh, I have to do this,
Yeah.
and then that's where burnout comes from. And
Right.
because we think it has to be us, and it's like, no, 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 like give it away, empower somebody else to do it. And they might not do it just like you, they might do it better.
Mm.
And it's one more thing off your plate that they can do. And yeah, there's a couple of people that, like, I've given more of my job away in the past 2 years than ever before, and it's been a lot of fun, to watch them rise up and to watch them
That's
begin to take
awesome.
things. And it's like, yeah, they've got this. I'm not in the same meetings I was in 9.5 years ago. I assure you
Wow.
that.
That's
I
awesome.
don't go. I don't go to a lot of those meetings anymore. I don't. They don't need me there. So that was a long time ago. They need somebody else. They need a new leader there. And that person, they're growing, they're flourishing, they're having fun, and they're working in their giftings. So,
Yeah. How long of, I mean, and maybe all four of those people are very different in their
mm,
journey, but like,
mhm.
are we talking years of investing, developing to the point where they're ready for
Yes.
it? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good.
You said it earlier, you know, leadership development's not a microwave, it's a crock pot.
Yeah.
It's something that it's just a slow churn, right? And
Right.
I love to say this phrase: consistency compounds. We think about interest, compounding interest,
Hmm.
and how what that
Hmm.
does for finances. Consistency in leadership development does just the same thing, because
Love
we're
it.
just growing a little bit at a time. And
Yep.
don't ever like neglect the consistency of staying in and developing yourself.
Yes.
That's when it's cooking, because now we're actually, it's just and you don't even realize how much you're growing, because it's just a consistent thing, and it's a gradual growth.
Love
And
it.
that's, you can start to just, I like, how much weight can we put on this person's shoulders, right?
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
continue to add just a little bit more. Before you know it, they're holding up something they never could have done if you would have thrown them in the
Totally.
deep end. um,
Totally.
and and that's why we burn people out of workplaces, we burn people out of ministries, we burn people out of all these things, because we didn't help develop them. um,
Yes.
but as a coach, there's nothing more satisfying than to see somebody grow into something that they never were could have been on their own, right, without the Lord's
Uh,
help, and with just a little bit of love towards them, like, here, just get this.
seriously.
Yeah.
Or I love that. Man, I and this would be my personal conviction, but like if we don't do this in the body of Christ, like we should be leading the charge on these things, you know? That would be my conviction. But if we don't do this, I think we get the same old, same old. I don't think stats change for burnout. I don't think stats change for turnover. I don't think stats change for church plants that don't make it.
Hmm.
There's just so many areas that this applies to. And not only that, I mean, these principles for maybe somebody's watching today, and like these are the same principles that we should and could be using in the home and family, our kids, developing our kids, changing similar things. Like we talk about, well, in church world, we've always done it this way, so we're still doing it this way, but there's nothing's changing. We do the
Hmm.
same thing in our families. Well,
Yeah.
my grandparents did it this way, my parents did it this way. I'm going to do it this way. And it's like, uh, maybe there needs to be some change. So
Hmm.
I love the
So good.
idea of culture shift as a name. Super
Mm,
great.
thank you.
Um, Man, Scott, as we are coming to a close, first off, love that you were on today. I'm going to put all your information in the show notes for when this goes live. And, but I always ask people that are on the show if they'd be willing to pray for everybody that's watching or listening. And so if you could do that for us, and then I'll wrap us up and we'll close the episode.
Love it. Thank you so much, Kyle. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity today. It's been amazing. Father, we come before you, and Lord, we're humbled that you've allowed us to have a relationship with you, and um, you're continually doing a work inside of us. And today we just say thank you for that. We realize that growth happens outside of our comfort zone, and Lord, that's where you'd have us to be, and it helps us to trust you more. Lord, so I pray for those who are listening today. Um, you know exactly what they are walking through. You know where they are. You know what's going on in their mind, in their heart. And God, you have a plan for every single one of them. And Lord, maybe some of these things have resonated today. Maybe they haven't. Or our prayer is you would use, Lord, us for your kingdom and not for our own glory. And if there's someone out there that just needs to talk to someone, and say, I need help with this, or I'm in a situation that I just need to talk to somebody, God, may they reach out. May they say, you know what? I realize I'm better together than I am on my own, and I felt alone for far too long. Um, Lord, you know that in ministry, lead pastors, executive pastors, pastors across the board, Lord, it's you're more connected with people, but lonelier than ever before, because often we don't share what's actually happening in our lives. God, help us to be people that share what's actually happening and be authentic and transparent. And Lord, just point people to you. And so I pray for anybody listening, God, that you would just meet with them, and may they feel and sense your presence. And I pray that you continue to watch over Kyle. Lord, thank you for this uh, podcast that he's doing to encourage people, to show that there are different ways, different concepts in ministry. Lord, help us to always rely on you, but also to rely on things that point people to you. And we love you. We ask it in your son's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Scott. And thank you, everybody that's watching or listening. Reminder, we are on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. You can catch us on any of those. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And so thank you for watching today. We're going to put all of Scott's details in the show notes. If you want to reach out to him, we'll make sure that there's a way to do that as well. And so, Scott, thank you again for being on the show.
Absolutely.
And thanks, everybody, for watching and listening. Have an amazing week.